In the second test of the Rugby Championship, they narrowly beat the Pumas in Nelspruit last week 30-23. Coach Allister Coetzee made one injury-enforced change to the starting lineup, that of Vincent Koch for Julian Redelinghuys for this weekend. But all eyes are on Coetzee as he finds his feet in what will be his fifth test match. The pressure, expectations and pitfalls of the position for South Africa's head rugby coach is something that rugby journalist and author Gavin Rich has put under the magnifying glass. Not once, but now twice with his new book, and he joins us to speak about it. It's The Springbok Coaches, which is a follow-up to The Poison Chalice. A very good morning and welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, thank you. Thanks very much.
Okay, let's start because I know we chatted when you released the first book, The Poison Chalice, and when anybody looks at, from the outside, at the job of Springbok coach, one would say, oh, that's a dream job. But in the last book and this book, it's not so.
Absolutely. Well, I think Ian McIntosh, who was one of the early Springbok coaches, he said in the book that he was phoned by an ex-Springbok coach from a long time ago, long before, during the isolation, before the isolation era, who phoned him and said, "You'll never know how lonely the job is until you're actually in it." And that's what most of the coaches have told me, is subsequent to having obviously lost the job, and now they've gone back to normal life. Then now they've normalised, they've been prepared to be a little bit more open about it, and they say it is a very, very lonely job, and the pressures are incredibly acute, and it is the toughest job in South African sport, I think.
Do you feel that the criticism towards the coaches is fair? Because one of the additions to this book is trying to seek those answers as to what went wrong at the Rugby World Cup last year.
Well, I think one of the problems is when we came back from international isolation in 1992, we were a little bit too arrogant. We thought that we should be ruling the world. We took on New Zealand and Australia in the space of a week. And we've never really caught up in the sense that there's always this expectation that the South Africans should be the top team in the world. And the reality is that we actually lost a lot of, we really fell behind during those isolation years. There were long isolation years. And, when some core schools have been neglected, a lot of foreign coaches who come here and work here often will tell me that they can't believe how poorly skilled our players are. And that is a problem. And we really are slipping at the moment. We've got to a point now where we're playing against Argentina and we're not 100% sure we're going to beat them, whereas that wasn't the case in the past. And, we're going to Salta this weekend, a very, very tough game that they're going to be playing. And a lot of people will say, well, the Argentinians have a good chance of winning, which, wouldn't have been the case, say years ago. And that really is the problem. I think we're a little bit too arrogant. I think we've got to work a lot harder. Our coaching has to improve. There has to be a lot more attention on core skills through all the levels, from schoolboy up.
Okay, so, having put now the coaches under the magnifying glass, then it's not really just a problem with the coaches, but the entire rugby structure. The expectations are sometimes too high. It probably didn't help that we won the World Cup in 1995. We won that on spirit and passion, and we were playing the tournament at home. So then everybody expected us to carry on ruling the world, and we won it again, of course, in 2007. But there are not a lot of nations that can win a World Cup. So in 2007, when New Zealand and Australia got knocked out in the quarter-final stage, there was a good chance that South Africa were going to win it, because there weren't a lot of other nations left. What do you say? So are you saying that our two Rugby World Cups were a little bit of luck?
No, I'm not saying a little bit of luck, but I'm just saying that probably winning the Tri-Nations or now the Rugby Championships is tougher than winning the World Cup, in the sense that you've got to play there was a time when you had to play New Zealand 3 times and Australia 3 times in the Tri-Nations. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying in a World Cup you end up playing, I'm going to say Japan. Of course we lost to Japan last year, but that's supposed to be an easy game. We play against Scotland as our tough game last year in the pool stages. That's one. Then you get to the quarter-final stage. You play against Wales. South Africa have only lost to Wales twice in their history, so you expect to beat them. So it all really hinges, the World Cup really hinges on the one game, which was against New Zealand at Twickenham in the semi-final. Yeah. If they'd won that, the Springboks would have been heroes, but of course they lost it. So that's what I'm saying. The World Cup sort of comes down to maybe 1 or 2 games, whereas at Tri-Nations, which we never, at Rugby Championships, which we don't win very often, is much more of a test of how good you are. Because you play more games.
One of the biggest casualties after the World Cup was, of course, the coach Heineke Meyer that's opened the way for Allister Coetzee to now take the position. And one of the things that I found very interesting as I was going through some of the new chapters was a name of Morné Steyn coming up, and he was a big question mark over Heineke Meyer's selections. And is Allister Coetzee going down the same road?
Unfortunately, it looks like he might be. I think, when you get that job, you go in. I remember Mark Andrews, a former Springbok player who played under more Springbok coaches than I think anyone other than Joost van der Westhuizen. Remember him saying to me that when you take the Springbok job, you obviously got to be quite arrogant. You've got to be quite self-confident. Otherwise, you wouldn't want that job. You think you've got all the answers, but then once you're in the job, it's very difficult to keep that sort of same perspective and ambition, if you like. And then suddenly you start making selections out of pressure. And somebody like you mentioned, Morné Steyn now. Morné Steyn, he's not going to be around for the next World Cup. So you've got to ask, well, what is he doing there? Well, the reason he's there is because Allister Coetzee has to win the next test. He's got to basically win the test to keep the pressure away. And that is actually the problem. The New Zealand are very good at succession planning. Beauden Barrett came into the All Black team this last week, and everybody said, well, he's a new guy, but he's not really a new guy. He had 40 caps because he actually managed to get quite a lot of games as a substitute during the during the previous coaching era. And that's actually the whole thing, is that New Zealand, Steve Hansen is their coach at the moment. He's been involved with the All Blacks since 2004. We change our coaches every 4 years. Every new coach comes in with new ideas and new ideas which players are good and how each player should play. That's really why we're struggling, is because we don't have the continuity, we don't have the succession planning, we don't have the planning full stop that the New Zealanders do.
It's such a pity, because I would have loved to have spoken to you a little bit more, because you have some insights that so many people would love to have. But unfortunately, we've actually run out of time. Gavin Rich is a seasoned rugby journalist, also the author of The Springbok Coaches, which is a follow-up to the book called The Poisoned Chalice. And in this one, it speaks about the failure at the Rugby World Cup last year, and also about what will await Allister Coetzee. All right, that concludes your sport in this hour. We'll have more sport for you after 8 o'clock. It's time now to check in with Tietie and what the weather holds in store for the rest of the day.